And back at Donington Park now for the 6th round of the International Touring Car Racing Championship. We're looking back at the 3rd row of the grid. Giancarlo Fisichella and Stefano Modena 5th and 6th in the lineup. 7th and 8th, that's Uwe Altzen in the green Mercedes, and the best of the Calibras thus far, Klaus Ludwig, the reigning German touring car champion, in the distinctive Rosberg Racing midnight blue, yellow and white car. The cars lining up in the starting order of the finishing order of the first of the 2 races here, round 5 of the championship. So at the head of the grid, it's Bernd Schneider and Dario Franchitti. They're 2 silver Mercedes side by side. We're looking still back further down the grid there to Sandy Grau's Mercedes, Manuel Reuter's Calibra, 9th and 10th, then Bernd Melander and Christian Danner, 11th and 12th in the Mercedes and Alfa Romeo. But starting at the top of the grid as the engines start, the cars now prepare for their reconnaissance lap. 1 or 2 gaps on the grid. The most notable, of course, the Calibra of Yannick Dalmas, which inverted itself at Redgate Corner in the gravel trap in the first of the 2 races. His car is beyond reasonable repair. There, though, we see the lineup of cars, 20 cars on the grid. And at the tail of the field, Michele Alboreto has overcome his electronics problems in his Alfa Romeo. He's lining up at the tail of the field, but at the head of the field with the yellow door mirrors on the left side of our screens. Race 1 winner, Bernd Schneider in his Mercedes-Benz. His teammate with the red door mirrors, Dario Franchitti, on the outside of the front row. Behind them, it'll be the yellow Mercedes-Benz of Kurt Thiem, the black Mercedes of Jörg van Ommen, then the Alfa Romeos on row 4. Giancarlo Fisichella on the inside with blue stripes on his bonnet, and number 18, Stefano Modena, in the bright racing red Scarlet machine from Milan. And the cars head off behind the pace car for the reconnaissance lap. Dario Franchitti already weaving there, bringing the heat into the tyres. Tyre temperature, of course, absolutely critical for these cars. At the tail of the field, Michael Bartels, he had mechanical problems. He is starting right at the very back of the field. Michele Alboreto also now on row 11 of the grid. 23 cars due to take the start. In fact, 22, because Yannick Dalmas, of course, is missing. There is Michele Alboreto, the 2 Alfas at the tail of the field, potentially capable of carving their way up into the top 10 places, but in the heat of this competition, really, it can be said that it's going to be very difficult indeed. 2 cars starting from the pit lane. The Alfa Romeo of Michele Alboreto, in fact, in the pit lane as we speak. Nicola Laurini's car actually starts from the pit lane too. Now, Nicola Laurini's car is the car which has just had its engine changed in less than 12 minutes. A new record for the Alfa Romeo team. Engine out to engine in 12 minutes. Also starting from the pit lane after her mechanical problems, Ellen Law, the ever unlucky Berlin lady, that seems to have had all sorts of problems since becoming the first woman to win a Class 1 touring car race at Hockenheim in 1992. But the winner of Donington Park in 1995 heads the field on the warm-up lap for the second of the 2 races here this afternoon. Bernd Schneider, followed by the Scotsman Dario Franchitti. Then behind him is the Dane Kurt Thiem, the German Jörg van Ommen, then Giancarlo Fisichella. And the balconies are full, the grandstands are full, the spectators are lining the circuit, and there in the pit lane, waiting for the rolling start, is Ellen Law's Mercedes-Benz, Michele Alboreto's Alfa Romeo. Nicola Laurini is at the tail of the pack as they head through the left-hander at Starkey's, this historic Donington Park circuit. Famed, of course, for the site of Silver Arrow's Mercedes-Benz in the 1930s Grand Prix just before the war. Then the Silver Arrows returned again in the 1980s in the World Sports Car Championship here to this circuit. Now they're here in international touring car racing too, but they face the challenge of the Vauxhall Calibras, there, JJ Later's car. Then the Alfa Romeos, the tail field. There is Michael Bartels. There is Nicola Laurini, the driver who wanted so much to win here this weekend, to prove that the Alfas have got the measure of the Mercedes-Benz. But these hot, dry conditions most definitely suiting the rear-wheel drive cars. There's no advantage in traction for the four-wheel drive cars to offset their weight penalties. They run around about 50 kilos heavier But of course, Bernd Schneider is carrying the second largest amount of ballast of any of the cars here. The cars are ballasted according to the previous race results. Bernd Schneider's car is carrying over 12 kilos of lead ballast. Nicola Larini, unfortunately, at the tail of the field, is carrying 27 kilos of ballast as the championship leader heading into this race meeting. But Bernd Schneider is now the championship leader after his victory in round 5 of the series. He is now up to 60 points. Nicola Larini still second in the championship on 47 points. Dario Franchitti now up to third in the championship on 45 points. And he's second in the race on the first of the 2 races, and second on the road as they head down through the Melbourne hairpin. The build up to the start. The car will be pulling over. Tell us the procedure, Derek.
Well, of course, it can't be that good for you as a driver to have to do 2 starts in an afternoon. You've gone through the adrenaline emotion of 1 start, the excitement of actually winning a race, and then you have time to cool off, and then you have to get back in and do it all over again, and it's pretty wearing. I don't think anybody as a spectator realises how very tiring it is. So now they've really got to pump themselves up so that as that flag drops, they really go for it, rather than get, I mean, just a slight slip and they could be out of contention. And obviously Schneider is no way is he going to want Franchitti to get by, so he's going to be pushing himself right to the very limit. But I think you're going to see Franchitti sitting right on his tail the whole time as they come round onto the start-finish straight.
So it's the 2 silver Mercedes, 1 and 2, as we watch for the start lights to flick to green as they head under the bridge on the inside of the track as the cars hit full throttle. Bernd Schneider takes the race lead. Dario Franchitti is wide, and the Alfa Romeo makes a superb charge up the outside. Stefano Modena round into 3rd place. He's challenging Franchitti, throws up the dirt, he's up on the curbs. Kurt Thiem dives back down the inside to reclaim 3rd position as they head down the Craner curves. 120 miles an hour. Bernd Schneider out in front, Dario Franchitti in 2nd, but Stefano Modena on a charge in the Alfa Romeo.
Well, that is quite a surprise. So here we are, Franchitti's going to have his work cut out. The last thing he's now worried about is chasing Schneider. He's going to be holding his position to let it settle down and perhaps get back to a status quo as they were in the last race.
So Modena is springing the surprise on the Mercedes. The Mercedes finished 1, 2, 3, 4 in the last race, but it's Alfa Romeo now on the charge. Giancarlo Fisichella, he is down in 6th place. The 2 yellow Mercedes now running very close together, 4th and 6th. Fisichella down in 7th, but it's Schneider out in front. Then it's Dario Franchitti, then Stefano Modena, then Kurt Thiem in the first of the yellow Mercedes ahead of Jörg van Ommen. Then it's Sandy Grau making a superb start. Sandy Grau from 9th up to 6th position. We're riding in Bent Melander's Person Motorsport Mercedes-Benz. Ahead of him is Keke Rosberg.
Look who's gone wide there.
And Gianni Giudici,
I think that's
Giancarlo Fisichella, I beg your pardon, runs very wide indeed, allows Klaus Ludwig to challenge, defend superbly, but Ludwig crawling all over the tail end of the car. Across the line comes Bernd Schneider, then Dario Franchitti, Stefano Modena, Kurt Thiem, Jörg van Ommen and Sandy Grau. Giancarlo Fisichella down to 7th place with Ludwig piling on the pressure, as is Uwe Alsen in the green Mercedes-Benz.
This is exactly, of course, what Dario Franchitti didn't want, was to have somebody on his tail at this stage, and he's got it. And he's got a charging Stefano Modena, who's obviously really pumped up, trying to make amends for not such a brilliant result in the last race, and he's really got in amongst them all there and causing a lot of a stir. So Franchitti's going to have his work cut out here, and it was right behind him. He has Kurt Thiem and Van Ommen, so they're all close together, and they're just setting themselves up, sorting themselves out. And of course, don't forget, they may well have altered some of their setups on the cars, and they're just finding out just how well that setup change has worked, improved, or else made the car less capable of going well.
Well, certainly, Dario Franchitti is now starting to feel the pressure, although he's starting now to pull away in 2nd position. It's car number 14 out in front, Bernd Schneider, then number 15, Dario Franchitti. Number 18, Stefano Modena's Alfa Romeo in 3rd, ahead of Kurt Thiem, Jörg van Ommen, Sandy Grau, Giancarlo Fisichella in 7th position. Then it's Klaus Ludwig in the Calibra in 8th, ahead of Uwe Alsen, Manuel Reuter, Christian Danner, Keke Rosberg and Bent Melander, with JJ Leto in the black Calibra there in 14th place, ahead of Stig Amthor, who's coming under pressure. In fact, it's not Stig Amthor, because the Alphas are battling their way through. That's Nicola Larini and Michael Bartels, having started from the back, up to 15th and 16th places. Michael Bartels closes in again on the tail of Nicola Larini, and Larini driving in wild style up over the curves, out of Goddard's. There you see the Alfas trailing JJ Leto's Calibra into Redgate Corner, riding with Michael Bartels, Larini ahead of him. These two cars, of course, started at the very back after mechanical problems in the first race, and they are making a superb charge through the field.
Yes, they really are. Bartels obviously didn't do too much of a race in the first one, so he's fairly fresh. So he's working over in front here, and he's really pushing himself up. But of course you can see the Alfa actually start to pull away, this particular Alfa in front here, pulling away from Bartels. But Bartels seems to catch him up in the tighter corners, which is quite interesting. Larini, realising the pressure, is actually making the most of where his car has an advantage, which, as I say, seems to be the faster corners, allowing Bartels to catch him up under braking into the slower ones. So they've obviously got varying setups on these cars, and of course they're different teams, so they have different setups in various different situations.
So the shadows lengthen as Larini, pursued by Bartels, heads out of Coppice Corner. We're riding with him now through the S's, the orange Alfa chasing the blue, white and red Martini Alfa, who in turn is closing in on JJ Leto's Calibra. Dropping back now is Stig Amthor in his semi-privateer car in 17th place. So this is 15th, 16th, 17th. And Ellen Law also on a charge. She started from the pit lane, is up to 17th position now, ahead of Stig Amthor, but ahead of the race at the moment it's still Bernd Schneider, just a fraction outside a 100-mile-an-hour average lap speed around Donington Park. The man who set that in qualifying on Saturday was one Dario Franchitti. Dario Franchitti setting the first ever 100 miles an hour saloon car lap of Donington Park. But it's Bernd Schneider at the head of the race now, 157 kilometers an hour average lap speed on his best lap. 2.1
lap record.
And a new lap record for Class 1 touring cars at Donington Park, as Derek quite rightly points out. He's now 2.18 seconds ahead of Dario Franchitti. Stefano Modena still holding on in third, pulling away from Kurt Thiem, Jörg van Ommen and Sandy Grau, 4th, 5th and 6th places. But it's the two silver cars heading the scarlet Alfa Romeo, then the yellow, black and yellow Mercedes, and the margin stays the same, 2.18 seconds down to the S's.
But it's quite a lot, you know. He's pulled away half a second a lap at the moment. But of course at the same time Dario Franchitti's pulled away from Stefano Modena. So maybe Franchitti can settle down and start to bridge that gap up to Schneider, but at the same time he mustn't push it because he can overheat the tyres, and we know from reports we had after the first race that of course the tyres seem to be the very decisive factor, and they cannot push them too hard.
You're watching Sky Sports.
Into Goddard's comes the battle between Uwe Altsson and Klaus Ludwig for 8th position. JJ Leto is right behind. And there comes the pack. JJ Leto in the black car, the landmark Bent Melander closing in on the number 2 car of Keke Rosberg, ahead of Leto. So Leto having a better run with the Calibra and closing in behind JJ Leto now. Nicola Larini has got that margin down to 0.8 of a second. There is Leto, the Finnish former Formula 1 driver, ended his Formula 1 career in 1994 after a horrendous testing accident, broke his neck at Silverstone in the Benetton Formula 1 car, made a few appearances after that, but then moved to the German Touring Car and International Touring Car Championships, and is proving right on the pace.
And of course won Le Mans this year.
Yes, most definitely. Sadly, I was trying to avoid that in case you still had sore feelings about that, Derek.
Not in the least. I mean, it was a great effort and they deserved to win, so I was very happy to be third. I never thought I'd ever see third again at Le Mans. Anyway, back to this race. But of course, as you can see, as Larini comes up, he's bringing Bartels with him, and they're obviously having a right old work over here. They're sliding around a lot, really making the cars work. The track is probably at its warmest right now.
And Bert Melander had a big moment there. That's allowed JJ Leto to challenge. Left his braking just a tad too late for the S's. The car slithered wide. We saw him run off the racing line, and JJ Leto is now right with him. But so is Nicola Larini, and Michael Bartels is closing in. Bartels takes a look down the inside of Leto. And Leto closes the door. And don't forget, this is the battle that's going on for 13th, 14th, 15th and 16th places. And Michael Bartels now right on the tail of Nicola Larini. The two Alfas closing in on JJ Leto's Vauxhall Calibra.
But of course it's not easy to get by here, and of course with everybody having these anti-lock brakes, it means that a brave man doesn't necessarily get by, because everybody has the same opportunity to stop. ABS is a great system, but of course sometimes in racing I begin to wonder whether it is an advantage to have it on racing cars. But they're steaming up the hill here, and as you can see, Bartels is actually losing ground now, and you wonder why that is. But we said just now that Larini seems to get through in the faster corners, but he has a problem.
Michael Bartels' luck runs out again at Donington Park. He's watching his mirrors. You can see the safety head restraints on the seats now to prevent whiplash injuries, but he's undoing his seatbelt. The race is over. The car is now coasting. You can see he's going down the gearbox. Well, Michael Bartels bitterly disappointed. It was a superb charge through the field while it lasted. He's looking in his mirrors again, waves as a car goes through. He's limping for the pits, now communicating with his pit lane. So Michael Bartels is not going to do as well as his illustrious girlfriend, Steffi Graf. He is not going to make it a family double this weekend. He's crawling down the Starkey Straight as already across the line comes the race leader, Bernd Schneider, followed by Dario Franchitti, then Stefano Modena in the Alfa Romeo, number 18. Number 6 team leads Jörg van Ommen in 4th and 5th places. The yellow Mercedes leads the black one. Then the second of the yellow Pro-Mark Mercedes-Benz of the young German charger, Sandy Grau, with Giancarlo Fisichella in 7th place. And some gesticulation going on there for Michael Bartels. He's asking the marshals to move the cones so he can coast to a standstill at the S's. The car is not even going to make it back to the pit lane. Michael Bartels' race most definitely over, and a bitter blow for the German. Certainly proving you don't have to be an Italian to be quick in the Alfa Romeos, but proving you do, or you can go quick as an Italian in the Alfa Romeo, is Stefano Modena, another driver with a lengthy Formula One career behind him, then moved into the international touring car field last year.
The team is beginning to work over Modena here, which is quite interesting. Obviously, Modena must have been working his tyres pretty heavily on those opening few laps, which has meant his tyres have started to go off, allowing the others to catch him up a little bit. And as we saw how competitive and how close the Mercedes were in the first race, it's obvious that the charge that Modena had is now actually, he's now suffering from that charge. Back off just a little bit.
And a Calibra running slowly too, and that looked like the number 9 car, I think, Manuel Reuter. Manuel Reuter, it appears, is slowing. This is what happened. Let's see. Ludwig goes wide. Rosberg goes through down the inside of him, and it could be a brake problem for Klaus Ludwig. We'll see as the cars head across the line. There is Klaus Ludwig that's dropping back down the field. So Klaus Ludwig is limping. He has a problem. So the order now is Schneider, Franchitti, Modena team, Van Ommen, Sandy Grau up into 6th place, Fisichella up into 7th, Uwe Altzen 8th, 9th is Manuel Reuter, 10th is Christian Danner, and the car is stationary at the end of the pit lane. It's Klaus Ludwig's car crawling to a halt, as heading already up to Coppice Corner and sprinting across the track. That's Michael Bartels. Having left his abandoned Alfa Romeo, he returns to the pits.
He'll probably jump on a helicopter and take off back to London, I think.
Well, poor old Michael Bartels, hasn't really been his weekend. He spent yesterday sitting, waiting for a delay in qualifying to end in the hope of making it by helicopter down to Wimbledon to see Steffi play. And, of course, the qualifying was delayed when Manuel Reuter's car blew up in spectacular fashion, and he actually didn't make it to the Wimbledon Centre Court. But now JJ Leto really getting the pressure from Nicola Larini, 13th and 14th places, the number 20 Calibra, the number 8 Alfa Romeo, and don't forget Nicola Larini up to 14th place already, started 22nd and last in this race.
Yes, he's actually all over the back of JJ, but later JJ hasn't really improved that much from the first race. It's just that Larini is obviously charging through because his car is in much better shape, and I'm sure he's going to overtake it at any moment now.
Larini has been taking 0.3 of a second a lap for the last 4 laps off JJ Leto. Bernd Schneider comes across the line, followed by Franchitti, Modena team, Van Ommen, Grau, Fisichella, Altzen, Reuter, Danner, Rosberg, Nelander in the Mercedes-Benz leading JJ Leto and Nicola Larini. Front engine rear-wheel drive V6 Mercedes-Benz with 2-wheel drive. The Vauxhall Calibra and the Alfa Romeo, both with the 2.5-litre V6 engines and 4-wheel drive.
The thing about the four-wheel drive, you know, is that inherently they have an understeer problem. So they're forever, always as you turn in, you have to be so exact where you put the car.
Well, there's a traffic jam at the end of the pit lane with cars being pushed back up there now because Stig Amthor, the Berlin driver, also out in his Alfa Romeo, and a demon beast driving. Kurt Team obviously in trouble in his Mercedes-Benz. Stefano Modena, he tried to outbrake Modena down there. You said he was putting on the pressure, but he got it all wrong at the S's. Modena holds on to his third place. Jörg van Ommen takes advantage to move up to fourth, but Kurt Team's fighting back at the Melbourne hairpin. Tries to get down the inside, but it's now the commentator's nightmare. The two yellow Mercedes, one ahead of the other. Kurt Team still ahead of his teammate Sandy Grau in fifth position, with Jörg van Ommen up to fourth position as they cross the line. Ahead of them both now. Stefano Modena, though, gets a breathing space in the Alfa Romeo.
That's what he needed, because it now means he can hold on his correct line and he doesn't have to overdo the car, overdo the driving, and keep everything cool.
So now joining in the pit lane, Sabine Kerner, he's talking to Klaus Ludwig.
Ich habe versucht, hin und her zu schalten, aber es kam nichts mehr, und dann habe ich schnell auf Seite verdrückt.
Well, it appears that they have a problem with the car. We couldn't actually ascertain exactly what the technical nature of the problem was. Derek was listening into that. You've worked with Porsche for many years, Derek. Could you actually pick up what Ludwig was saying?
Not a word. He said something about Schnell. I don't speak a word of German. I'm a very good French. German, I'm hopeless.
Oh, well, we'll find out from the Vauxhall Opel pit a little bit later on what happened to Klaus Ludwig, the Rosberg Racing team. Meanwhile, the battle's still on for that 4th, 5th and 6th places. Jörg van Ommen in 4th position, Kurt Team in 5th, Sandy Grau in 6th position. And they're all closing in on Stefano Modena in car number 18. Now we're talking to the young German driver.
Ist eigentlich das Getriebe kaputt gegangen. Auf die Stadt hier rauf.
Sounds like
habe ich schon gehört, dass es Geräusche macht.
Transmission problem for Stig Amthor. He said literally the gearbox is kaput. I don't think you need to say it any more succinctly than that.
No.
Stig Amthor, the young guy from Berlin, moved straight from Formula Junior into the DTM with Mercedes last year, now driving for Alfa Romeo in the International Touring Car Series. Now it's Jörg van Ommen's turn to press the Mercedes advantage home on the Alfa Romeos. The Alfa Romeos and the Opels, don't forget, four-wheel drive. They're carrying a little bit of weight penalty, 25 kilos as a result of that. It isn't working to their advantage in these very hot conditions. That just puts more stress on the car's tyres. The Mercedes, of course, rear-wheel drive only.
But you've got
a big squeal of tyres.
And off goes
And
Modena.
off goes Giancarlo Fisichella into the tyre wall hard at Redgate corner. Car sliding as it enters the braking area. It appears that Fisichella obviously perfectly okay, but no doubt very, very disappointed. The car well and truly beached. It's right off the racing line. It's as far away into the tyre wall as you get. There you see the car swapping ends as he tries to turn into the corner. Derek, what do you think happened?
Well, what happened is, of course, that he was hard on his brakes, and one assumes they all have ABS brakes, and they were working all right, but at the end of the road, he wasn't about to stop, because he was still going too fast, so he naturally turned the wheel and he spun off the road. There was no way that he was going to get round the corner or stop in time. And boy, did they cover some sand on the way through there.
So now we rejoin the battle for third position. And it's the move being made for third by Jörg van Ommen on Stefano Modena. Pushes him wide. So goes Kurt Team. It's 3 abreast out of Melbourne. Up to Goddard's. Team dives across. He's going to try and take the inside line as Modena defends. Jörg van Ommen forces him to go all the way around the outside. Van Ommen loses ground. There's Kurt Team alongside, but Van Ommen rides up over the curb, stays hard on the power. Across the line, Modena breathes again in his third place, but Jörg van Ommen still holds on to fourth. Kurt Team fifth, Sandy Grau sixth. Superb racing through Redgate corner. Out in front, it's still Bernd Schneider ahead of Franchitti. Then this battle, Modena, van Ommen, Team and Grau. Oh, and across the grass goes Stefano Modena at the old hairpin. Something went wrong with the cars braking there, just too quick into the old hairpin. Modena slides wide, loses his third place, loses fourth, loses fifth, down to sixth. Because now up into third place comes Jörg van Ommen, the German in the black car. Let's take another look at that, just wide up over the curbs, Derek.
Yeah, he just got it out too wide coming in, of course his forward drive and everything, he just couldn't hold it in.
So Jörg van Ommen down in third position, or down from third position, down to sixth. It's Van Olmen third, Stefano Modena, I say, down now to sixth position, with ahead of him also Kurt Thiem and Sandy Grau, the three Mercedes running in convoy. And having had that disaster for the Alfa Romeo, it's a double disaster really, because Giancarlo Fisichella off at Redgate corner. That means the two Alfas that were running in the top 6 places are now out of contention. It's turning into another Mercedes benefit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 Mercedes in the top 7 places. Then it's the Calibra of Manuel Reuter in 8th position. Christian Danner's Alfa Romeo fighting his way back up to 9th position ahead of the Calibra of Keke Rosberg. JJ Leto here battling to hold on in 12th position ahead of Nicola Larini. The race-long fight between these two former Formula One drivers, keeping them ahead of Ellen Law. Ellen Law, who started from the pit lane in her Mercedes-Benz. You see her in the background, is up to 14th place. Superb drive from the Berlin lady.
But I don't think she's going to be able to do too much about these two until they have a moment between themselves, because there is certainly not room for anything. A puff of smoke there as Leto came down into the bottom of the corner there, and then on the power and streaking straight up. But boy, are they close, really close. And in fact, now pulling along.
Nicola Larini's chance, takes a look down the inside at the Starkey's left-hander into McLean's. Again, JJ Leto controlling the pace of both the cars through the corner, making sure that the Calibra is very wide indeed. Both these drivers enjoyed splendid dices in Formula 3000 and Formula 1 together, now here in the International Touring Cars. Battling behind Bernd Nederlander's Mercedes-Benz. JJ Leto 12th, Nicola Larini 13th, and again Larini seems to be faster down the straight. Into the braking area, both drivers right on the limit. It's 2 abreast through the S's, but 2 into 1 doesn't go. Nicola Larini realises that, waits to fight another day, but now has to defend from Ellen Law, steaming down the inside to Melbourne.
And of course she has the advantage right here, because she should be able to slip down the inside. There she goes. Oh, but she should be able to out-accelerate him up the road. Of course, she's got the two-wheel drive, a little bit maybe of extra power, because she hasn't got too much weight on there due to her previous results. And of course, there she is, pulled in a spot, which we don't think any of us thought she'd do.
So Ellen Law up 1 place from Nicola Larini. The predictions instantly proved wrong, as Ellen Law now starts to knuckle down and close in on JJ Leto. But certainly the fireworks aren't over yet, because Nicola Larini is still lapping faster on average than both Leto and Law. And no doubt Ellen Law is going to pile the pressure on JJ Leto. That'll give Nicola Larini his chance to fight back yet again. But to recap, at the head of the field, the Mercedes benefit, as we take another look at that demon move down into Goddard, and some debris flying off Ellen Law's car there. Any idea what that was, Derek?
No, it's a plate from underneath, isn't it? But I can't see quite why, unless she's been over some curbs. But we'll find out if she starts to lose some of her speed. But it's an under tray from underneath the engine somewhere, surely.
And it appears it could be damage to one of the front spoiler flaps on the Mercedes-Benz. Now, that could give her a problem heading into... In fact, the front spoiler does look intact. There's damage on the side skirt on the left side of the car. And you can see the under tray flapping as Ellen Law heads down the straight up to 140 miles an hour, though it's not affecting her. She makes a challenge on JJ Leto. Mercedes faster in a straight line. Later on the brakes. The tyre smoke, she's right on the limit. Ellen Law moves up to 12th position. Now JJ Leto rejoins his battle with Nicola Larini, who's pulling alongside.
Yeah, and of course, that really upset Leto. It meant he had to take the wrong line, which allowed Larini to pick up more pace out of the corner. And here you have a complete change round of positions, which we would have predicted about 3 laps ago. But of course, as we go down, JJ Leto actually has the inside line, so he has a slight advantage under braking. And we'll see what happens here. He's still going to maintain that. No, he's pulled back his position. Or should I say he's just about pulled back his position. And now Leto should be able to get himself in the swing of things and perhaps get his breath back. But he's not going to hang on to the Mercedes. That is absolutely flying.
So who is going to be the person holding the lucky 13th position? Is it going to be JJ Leto or Nicola Larini? Up to 12th place, sporting that amazing paint job, Ellen Law's Mercedes-Benz. The whole paintwork on the front of the car is as if the car's been peeled back to reveal the V6 engine. Then it's the black car of JJ Leto. Again, that puff of smoke as the car goes down the gearbox, the semi-automatic gearbox, and a big accident for Keke Rosberg. Rosberg off big time down at the old hairpin, and that appeared to be the car running back across the track to the inside. It's not the place you'd normally have an accident. There's no gravel trap down there, just the tyre wall, and Rosberg hit it hard.
He probably hooked over the outside curb. It slewed right round and went in on the right side as it happened. I think that's where it is. We'll have to wait and see when our camera sets back a little bit. But he really went in there backwards.
So Keke Rosberg still in the car at the moment. The marshals are easing him out very carefully, because even with these special safety seats, if we look back in the car, we'll see. Oh, here we see exactly what happened. This is the left-hander at Starkey's. Rosberg has already got it wrong over the curbs at the old hairpin, then hits the tyre wall in front of the commentary position there. Very hard indeed. The car flies through the air. That is about a 100 miles an hour impact into the wall. Following him with Bernd Mailander now in the Person Mercedes.
Yeah, he got right off the end of the curb, got his wheels on that dirt, and of course there's lots of dust there, and that was it, history. But doesn't it just show you how valuable that tyre wall is? Because that had been a wall, it would have been a very, very big hit.
Well, there, Keke Rosberg is fine and well, the 1982 Formula One world champion with Williams, and perhaps, perhaps there's something about that corner that attacks Formula One world champions, because Nigel Mansell went off in exactly the same place on the other side of the track a couple of years ago.
Yes, it's not a good spot for these boys, is it? I guess in a Formula One car, it's so smooth and neat and tidy, and in these cars, of course, they're a little bit unpredictable and not very smooth to drive. Very, very difficult.
So as Keke Rosberg looks on, it's Bernd Schneider out in front, ahead of his teammate Dario Franchitti, car 14 leading car 15 by a 1.75 second margin. Now nearly 10 seconds behind in third position, it's car number 3, Jörg van Ommen in his Mercedes-Benz, ahead of the 2 yellow cars of Kurt Thiem and Sandy Grau. 12 seconds covering the top 5 cars. Then it's Stefano Modena fighting his way back up to 6th position, getting an Alfa back into the championship points, ahead of Uwe Altzen in 7th position, Manuel Reuter in the Calibra in 8th, Christian Danner 9th in his Alfa Romeo, and Bernd Mailander taking advantage of Rosberg's accident to move up to 10th. But out in front, the battle is on, though, down in 12th and 13th places, still between JJ Leto and Nicola Larini. Of course, contemporaries in Formula One, prior to that, contemporaries in Formula 3002. I mean, just what's it like moving from these guys from one category to another, Derek?
Well, I mean, any driver, any good driver can make the change, but it is a great change to go and do a full-time season of touring cars when you've been in a very highly sophisticated, beautifully built, incredibly well handling single-seater, and to get into a car that really is a compromise at every level. Nobody, the car is heavy, they throw more weight at you, you don't have all the power that you used to, and of course it's very an ungainly car. However, these are probably the top touring cars that you're ever going to see, so you are seeing the best sort of cars. There's very little roll in the chassis, and therefore the drivers become and find it easier to adapt to.
And we just move now to Dario Franchitti, who seems to be closing in on the race leader, Bernd Schneider. The gap was down to 1.2 seconds at the end of last lap, and it could be that Schneider has got a repeat of what happened to him at Mugello. Tyre problems in the second race. It seems his car is slightly more hungry on tyres. There's no doubt at all that Dario Franchitti, the Scotsman, is closing in on the German. First and second places, the cars head across the line to complete the 17th of 25 laps. Now, Franchitti said he'd been saving his tyres in the first of the 2 races, and then, of course, the cars ran under caution for 4 laps, and that meant that his tyre strategy was too conservative. Perhaps now, though, the Schneider charge in the early stages of the race has caused him tyre wear problems. It's certainly allowed Franchitti now to get the margin down to 0.8 of a second. There we see it, 0.84 between Schneider and Franchitti. So the Scotsman is closing in on the German. We could have a home victory at Donington Park.
Be very careful, you're beginning to sound like Murray Walker already. I would say it's too early to say anything like that. I would say that Schneider realises his tyres are going off, he is in front, therefore he does have a certain amount of control, and therefore he's taking it a bit easier through the slower corners, and I think you can see that. Coming down to Melbourne, he's very much slower into that corner. So he's not burning off too much on acceleration, but you see now he's using it on the straights through the faster corners. Obviously, he's just trying to get a little bit of time back into those tyres. You can see Franchitti's right up his tail in these slower ones, but Schneider daren't get the tail out because he's going to burn off too much rubber. Franchitti is in a better position because he can actually control it a little bit from behind.
Well, then Bernd Schneider, again, very conservative, very steady through the tight right-handed hairpin at Melbourne. 65 miles an hour through there, back up to over 100 before you hit the brakes for the left-hander now.
See how gently he goes in there, Schneider. He's being very careful. You don't want to have flicking it from opposite lock. You've got to keep it nice and smooth so you get all 4 wheels doing their work to save the heat, so all top 4 tyres get hot at the same rate.
So across the line with 18 laps completed, it's Bernd Schneider still leading Dario Franchitti by 0.8 of a second. Jörg van Ommen is third, Kurt Thiem is fourth, Sandy Grau is fifth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for Mercedes, with Stefano Modena in the Alfa Romeo in sixth.
You're watching Sky Sports.
The Mercedes-Benz watches the timing monitors, which show the Mercedes still right out in front. Now coming up to lap Bernd Mailander in his semi-privateer Mercedes. Mailander moves out of the way, but perhaps that just did cost Bernd Schneider a little bit of time, because Dario Franchitti jinks past at the entrance to Coppice Corner. Superb bit of aggressive driving by Dario Franchitti. That has moved him even closer to his teammate. The two cars right together now down the main straight. The team orders from Mercedes-Benz say you can race as hard as you like against each other so long as you don't take each other off. And Dario Franchitti is very hungry indeed to take his second International Touring Car victory here on home ground for his team, or for him, at Donington Park. Franchitti most definitely closing now on Schneider, but is Schneider going to just continue to keep the pace up sufficient that it's going to keep them both ahead? Don't forget the two drivers aren't under any pressure from the third place man, Jörg van Ommen, who is still 8 seconds behind them. As across the line come the 1-2 silver Mercedes-Benz, then the car they've just lapped.
Would it be brilliant, though, for Franchitti to win this? I mean, unbelievable in his home country. But, of course, I'm sure he's in there listening to what the Germans are saying. If there are any team orders, you can always say, I didn't understand.
Well, the margin now down to just half a second after that lap. And the car's now coming up to lap, would you believe, the 6th place man. Such is the domination of the Mercedes here. On the 20th lap of the race, they're now coming up to close in. In fact, it's not going to be the 6th place man, because a couple of cars more are going across. It's going to be Michele Alboretto's 16th place Alfa Romeo. Michele Alboretto started at the back after those electrical problems on his car. He really hasn't figured in the race, and he's still struggling to get the performance out of the car. No such problems, though, for Dario Franchitti. We're riding with him onto the long main straight, up to maximum speed. Chance to relax, Derek?
Well, obviously the only place to relax on this circuit. It's very, very hard physically, and obviously very, very hard on the cars, as you can see. But that's the only place you can do it. But now you're back into it. What you mustn't forget is actually this, this gearbox system is so much better for the drivers. They haven't got to worry about their left foot on the clutch, so they can save a lot of energy. This is a very interesting manoeuvre here, but they're both being let through very, very nicely there by the Alfa Romeo driver, who's keeping well out of the way and allowing the two of them to pull away. But of course they are at least 7 seconds ahead, so it's quite a run they're ahead at the moment. So they haven't got anything to worry about from third place man. And I get the feeling now that Schneider has paced himself quite well. He's cooling it all off a bit. And of course, there we are.
Well, Norbert Haug, the Mercedes team chief, head of all Mercedes motorsport activity, including their Formula One efforts with McLaren, is just saying that he's not going to make any predictions, I think, about Bernd Schneider or Dario Franchitti. It's down to the two drivers in the car. So he says, we'll see what happens at the end of 5 more laps. Well, we'll see, because they're on lap 21 now. Just 4.5 laps to go. Norbert Haug turns his attention back to the monitors.
As Schneider pulled away a little bit.
Schneider opens up a little bit of a gap now. The gap back up to 0.8 of a second, but Dario Franchitti again brushes 2 wheels on the curbs at McLaren's. Now into the right-hander at Coppice Corner. This is going to go all the way down to the checkered flag. Still back in third place, it's Jörg van Ommen, 6.4 seconds behind now. Kurt Thiem and Sandy Grau running in formation in the two yellow Mercedes are 4th and 5th. And Stefano Modena in the Alfa Romeo, still 6th, ahead of Manuel Reuter's Calibra, Uwe Altzen in his Mercedes and Bernd Mailander. Then Christian Danner in his Alfa Romeo in 10th, with Ellen Law now moving up to 11th, ahead of JJ Leto and Nicola Larini.
Franchitti's driving the most amazingly sort of senior citizen type of race out there. I mean, he's doing a wonderful job when you think it's his first season really virtually out of Formula 3, and there he is racing against Schneider, who's so experienced. He even did World Sports Car Racing, by the way, for around whole years. And
a problem for the Alfa Romeo of Stefano Modena. He suddenly slows right on the limit behind him. Who was catching him all the way through the S's was Manuel Reuter, and Reuter suddenly dives through as the Alfa Romeo is heading for the pit lane, then changes his mind. He's continuing out onto the circuit. So whatever the problem was for Stefano Modena, it's moved him down into 7th place. But Modena jinked right, avoided the pit lane. He obviously thinks the problem is cured, but maybe it's not, because the car is slowing again.
He might be gear selection, it could be anything, couldn't it? But he certainly made a move for the pits, found something, then picked up and worked. He probably was talking to the crew as well, and they said, look, there's only 3 laps to go, boy, just stay out there, you still pick up some good points, but you're going to lose it all if you stop now.
So, late problems for Alfa Romeo again. So Manuel Reuter now moves the Vauxhall Calibra up into 6th. But at the head of the field, it's still Dario Franchitti, thrilling the home crowd in his pursuit of Bernd Schneider. The gap is down to 0.55 of a second again. The 2 cars absolutely equally matched through the speed trap on the main Starkey Straight. Just 1 kilometre an hour apart there at 135 miles an hour. And there we see the margin, still 0.55 of a second. This is a real game of cat and mouse, Derek.
Yes, it really is, but you know, you have to look at it. Franchitti wants to win, but at the same time doesn't want to risk going off, because if he took Schneider off as well, he'd be the most unpopular man in Stuttgart and in England right now. So he's got a lot in his mind, he's a lot to think about. So he's playing a very good, sensible, intelligent game.
So it's still number 14 leads number 15 across the line. Bernd Schneider and Dario Franchitti with Jörg van Ommen, then Kurt Thiem, Sandy Grau, Manuel Reuter in the top 6. And the limping Alfa Romeo, Stefano Modena, seems to have picked up his pace again in 7th position. The 2 silver Mercedes are still forging their way through the field.
And then, of course, Schneider seems to get away down through this section down here. But, of course, that's where probably the tyres aren't working really quite as hard, because he's only driving through the corners rather than actually accelerating very hard out of a hairpin.
So Bernd Schneider now moving the margin back up to 1.1 seconds. Now that could either be a problem for Franchitti, or it could be that Schneider has upped his game now. He's putting on the pressure. He was pacing himself as they come up to lap Louis Kragers, the man who used to race under the pseudonym of John Winter in his semi-privateer Mercedes-Benz, moves out of the way onto the Wheatcroft Straight.
Yes, well, of course, Schneider knows there's only a lap and a half to go now, so he can afford to let it go. The tyres have lasted, so why not let it have it go? But Franchitti gets past John Winter, or Louis Kragers as we call him, through there, and they've got about 500 yards to the beginning of their final lap, I think I'm right in saying.
So a little bit of gamesmanship there. Bernd Schneider tried to get the slower privateer Mercedes between the 2 cars, so Schneider obviously feeling the pressure, but Franchitti was having none of that at the S's, hurled his car through over the curbs inside of Kragers, and that has kept the margin at 1.1 seconds as they head across the line. 23 laps are going to be clicked off now. 2 more laps to go.
In fact, Louis Kragers used to be Bernd Schneider's teammate in the Jurs Porsche team, so I think he was hoping that Kragers might help him a little bit as he went by, but he didn't do too much for him. Franchitti was having none of it.
And the margin now, 0.79 of a second. This is turning into a cliffhanger. Well, a few more additional spectators perhaps for Donington Park, albeit briefly, as the cars head down the Craner curves. There we see Louis Kragers in the privateer, number 16 Mercedes-Benz, allowing through the 3rd place man, Jörg van Ommen, in the black Sonax Mercedes. All these cars still dominating the top 5 places. Van Ommen is in 3rd. Kurt Thiem and Sandy Grau in the 2 yellow Promark Mercedes are still 4th and 5th. And in 6th position, it's Manuel Reuter in the first of the non-Mercedes, the Vauxhall Opel Calibra. And Uwe Alsen now up into 7th position, having passed Stefano Modena, who is dropping back into the clutches of Bent Melander and Christian Danner. But we ride again with Dario Franchitti, clips the curbs at the S's, now up over the crest of the Melbourne hairpin.
And of course, we're going to see them coming up to start their last lap, but there's still a bit of a gap there. He's not only got to make up that distance, poor old Franchitti, but he's also going to get by Bernd Schneider, who's, I still think, is probably the most experienced, fast driver out there at this moment. Very, very difficult for him to do this. He's got to wait for Schneider to make a mistake, and I doubt that he's going to do that, not with 1 lap to go. He's far too experienced to be silly like that, but things have happened.
On to the final lap then it is, and Dario Franchitti, 0.79 of a second behind him into the hairpin. It's down to 0.52 of a second, half a second between the 2 cars, onto the last lap of the 25 at Donington Park. Round 6 of the International Touring Car Championship is certainly delivering the goods. Bernd Schneider, the man who started as a karting champion in Africa as well as in Europe, then moved to the German Formula 3 Championship, won that in 87, 88, 89 with Zakspeed, 86 to 89, the German Touring Car Championship in Ford Sierra Cosmos, then with the Kramer Porsche team in 1990 with John Winter. Or Louis Kragers, as we call him now, from 1991 to date with the Mercedes team in Class 1 touring car racing. And right behind him, Dario Franchitti, the 22-year-old from West Lothian, Formula Vauxhall Junior champion, Formula Vauxhall champion, British Formula 3 Championship runner-up in 1994, and then the DTM with Mercedes. He won at Mugello, beating his teammate Schneider. Can he do it again on the final lap? And the battle is still going on for 11th place between JJ Leto and Nicola Larini. That is going to go to the wire, as heading past the back markers again, Gianni Giudici, the privateer in his Alfa Romeo, keeps out of the way as heading through the final pair of corners. It's Dario Franchitti giving it everything, but pulling away. It's Bernd Schneider. Surely Franchitti can't do anything now at the Goddard's hairpin. It's 0.8 of a second into the hairpin, but Franchitti is very close indeed, but the checkered flag will be readied. There it is, it's waved. It's double victory for Bernd Schneider. Double victory for Mercedes-Benz, but what a performance by Dario Franchitti. A pair of fine second places. Jörg van Ommen comes across the line third, with Kurt Thiem and Sandy Grau making it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for Mercedes. Looking back now, Manuel Reuter crosses the line in 6th place for the Opel team, and jinking across the line as Louis Krager hits problems comes Gerd Ruch. He is going to finish in 16th place. Dario Franchitti shaking his head now, the anti-climax, Derek.
Yes, he obviously is feeling pretty bad right now. While he was pumped up in there, it really didn't matter. But all he wanted to do was to get by Schneider. He didn't, and he must be very disappointed. But, you know, he's learning. He's on such a high learning curve right now. He can only be very, very satisfied with a great drive, sort of in his first season in with real men drivers.
Certainly then, Bernd Schneider, as the Mercedes team congratulate one another on an amazing performance here at Donington Park. Bernd Schneider is waving to the crowd with the door open on his slowing down lap. He is every bit as delighted as you would expect. There is Bernd Schneider, followed home by Dario Franchitti. Schneider takes his helmet off in the car, as you say, Derek, very hot in there.
Yes, one's got no comprehension of just how hot it is. They've been working very, very hard for 25 laps, twice in a row. Very, very hot indeed.
So confirming the result then, Schneider from Franchitti by just 0.6 of a second. Jörg van Ommen third, Kurt Thiem and Sandy Grau fourth and fifth. A Mercedes whitewash, and waving across at one another as they run side by side down to the S's. Schneider and Franchitti. Then one of the Alfa Romeos, they're just coming up to pass him. Bernd Schneider is absolutely delighted with that.
Yes, he really deserves it. He's a really great driver, very underrated, not known on international basis. But I think at last we saw Franchitti slip by and wave to him and say, thanks, that's where I wanted to be all the time, but he couldn't get there.
So Franchitti is going to lead the Mercedes home into victory lane, but the victory going to Bernd Schneider. There we see 6th to 10th places. Ellen Law, a superb performance from her, starting at the very back.
Brilliant, absolutely outrageously good drive. I mean, she picked her way through the traffic, moved the guys aside and went through. I thought it was a superb drive. Never seen a drive like that for a long time.
And for those of you that wanted to know, JJ Leto did hold on to take 11th place from Nicola Larini. Another brilliant drive that lasted the duration of a very exciting race at Donington Park. But now into victory lane come the Mercedes-Benz, and Dario Franchitti, what a performance from him. A brilliant second position will put him on the podium for the second time today. And certainly, as we see now the point standings, he is confirmed in that second place in the championship behind his teammate Bernd Schneider, with Nicola Larini third, Kurt Thiem fourth and Jan Magnussen fifth. Jan, of course, having to sit this race out after a motorcycle accident at the Norris Ring, and he turned up here as a spectator with a broken leg. He'll be back in about 4 weeks racing again for the Mercedes team. So the championship not sealed yet by any means, but Dario Franchitti in his first season of the international touring car racing, as you say, Derek, really now a star to watch, and no doubt the man to watch for winning the title outright in 1996.
Absolutely, and I mean, you think of the circuits they've got to go to, one of them being Estoril in Portugal to come to. There's these fast circuits, they're not going to be in the rain, they're going to be dry, and the odds are that these Mercedes just are going to whitewash it everywhere they go. I can't see anybody beating them as long as the conditions are like this.
Well, Giancarlo Fisichella and Stefano Modena equal 6th in the championship standings, 1 point ahead of Jörg van Ommen, who finished 3rd in that race in his Mercedes-Benz. Sandy Grau in the Mercedes is 9th. And there you see Keke Rosberg. Well, he is contemplating his very heavy accident. He's got a wheel on the curbs out of the old hairpin. Mind you, the Calibra seems to have taken the impact very well.
Yes, well, it did go in pretty well straight, you know, on that left-hand rear corner into those tyres, which must have made it a little bit easier on the car, rather than go in the front end where all the engine and everything's mounted. So, you know, there were a lot of tyres there, and he didn't go straight in. He actually took it a glancing blow, but you saw the car sort of really rear up. It could have easily gone over.
You're watching Sky Sports.